Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Linda, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Really excited to dive deep into you, some of the cool things that you did around study groups, and just to learn more about you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.
Yes, happy to have you. And maybe if you could just share the beautiful picture behind you that something you took. Where is that?
That is the beautiful lake, Great Lake, Ontario, taken from Oswego, New York.
Fantastic. We're both close to New York City now. How do I know you? One of our past guests and longtime Lawline customer, Hani, and I always maybe pronounce his last name better than me, Sarji.
Sarji.
Okay.
Hani Sarji.
Hani Sarji. He was maybe episode 5 or 6 of Lawyers Who Learn, and he had been a Lawline customer for a long time. We'd gone back and forth. I asked him, it was a great interview with him, and I said, who would you recommend I bring on as a guest? And he said, you would be a great guest. And this is exactly what he said. If I can read it. He said, I mentioned Linda several times on my website because of the impact her study group has had. She created a space where lawyers and other estate planning professionals can ask questions, exchange knowledge, and sharpen their understanding of the law. What makes Linda's group so special is how she's actively fosters participation, inviting other lawyers who learn, welcoming anonymous questions, and encouraging people to get on camera and engage. I know from my own experience that being part of her study group has made me more confident, not just in my practice, but also in asking questions and sharing what I've discovered in the law. Linda truly embodies what it means to be a lawyer who learns, and I believe her insights would resonate with your audience. Wow. Awesome.
Pretty cool words.
Yeah, pretty cool words.
He's a member of my fan club.
Hopefully we'll add more to that club and me included. So where do we start? Let me ask you this question before we get into that and your background. Is there anything that when you've been interviewed before, you've been part of a panel, or you've talked to other people about your experience in learning and growing as an attorney and as a person, that you wish you could talk about more that you'd never had a chance to talk about, that is not maybe the so obvious questions that you're more passionate about, or something's been impactful for you? If not, that's fine. But sometimes I like to see where that goes. If not, we'll go into your background a little bit more, but I just wanted to start off with that.
That's an excellent question. And I'll have to say, it's not that I've not spoken about this concept, but I'm going to use a word that is just the most important word in our professional lives, and that is networking. Not networking for what it can get for me. Honestly, it's networking for the very sake of meeting other professionals in our own practice areas, if we have areas of concentration, in other practice areas, making friends, having lunches. Sure, that's great stuff, but knowing someone that I can call if I have a matrimonial issue, which is way outside of my wheelhouse, or someone thinks of me when they have a trust and estates issue because it's outside of theirs. Networking for the sake of networking is the purest way to increase learning for everybody. We meet people and they practice in an area that we maybe didn't even realize existed or had no idea what it meant.
Let's go into that, because one of the areas when I think of networking, the first thing that we think of that pops in my head, which by the way, this is a form of networking, but what pops in my head generally is at a conference in a ballroom with 600 other attorneys, and you barely can get a conversation or if you have 3 conversations, you'll never follow up with those people because it's just too much.
You're handing out cards and you know your card is going in the garbage after the conference.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't even print out cards anymore. I either connect with them on my phone right then and there on LinkedIn or something else, because I know what that means. Because when you say networking for the sake of networking, that de-energizes me a little bit, because I like networking for a purpose. I like getting to know somebody. To me, this is a purpose. This is learning what you've learned. How do you network? And maybe that's a segue a little bit to what this group you formed.
In our study session. I think we all recognize that the nature of networking changed dramatically the minute we went on COVID shutdown. Because previously, many of us attended in-person continuing legal education classes, cocktail parties, bar associations of various sorts, different programs. And then shut down, and we had to become resourceful. So I think the last 5 years, I've been an attorney now for 40 years. And I'd say the last 5 years almost bear no resemblance to the first 35.
That's fascinating. And when you're saying networking in your head, what percentage of that is like this over the computer versus in person?
I think more and more we are getting together again.
We're getting back to
in-person stuff. It changes. People who come to my study sessions know I've frequently referred to myself as a Luddite. I was a reluctant adapter to the new modalities, but Zoom was a godsend at the beginning of COVID. Yeah. People were isolated. We had solos who lived alone who thought they were going to tear their hair out if they didn't have some social interaction. So I think something like Zoom is very useful, not just for networking, but I have clients all over the world. And when I can sit on a Zoom with a client either on the West Coast or in Western Europe, I think that's pretty cool.
Now, explain how you have clients all over the world. Are you, because maybe I misunderstood. I thought you did estate planning, but maybe and I assume usually that's state specific.
I've, for all of these decades, done estate planning and estate administration. The administration part merely means, of course, once someone dies, we either probate their will or we do an administration if there is no will. And I'm now concentrating on that administration aspect. So what that means is I have an executor for Aunt Sally, and the executor lives in Washington State or Maryland or wherever. I have a beneficiary who lives in France or wherever.
Got it. So it's still New York based, but depends. The people who could be the executor or the beneficiary could be out of state.
Out of state, yes. They can't be exclusively out of the country. That's called a non-domiciliary alien, and New York State won't let them serve alone, although they will let them serve. New York law permits them to serve with a New York attorney. But yes, so that's how our clients or people interested in the estates that I'm assisting with can be virtually anywhere.
Got it. And maybe we'll circle back, but you mentioned the study group, you mentioned networking. Because I'm thinking about the attorney who's listening to this and may want to copy this study group idea. Can you tell us exactly what this is, how long it's been going on? Let's dive deep into it.
Sure. I appreciate you asking. It's probably the endeavor I'm most proud of in my entire professional career. And it started quite by accident. We are a month short of our 5-year anniversary. So the timing of this interview was quite fortuitous, but perfectly timed. We began, I'll say we as in the Queen's English, I'll cop to the fact that I began our meetings quite not having in mind what we have become. It was the beginning of COVID lockdown. The governor had just issued executive orders permitting us to do remote will executions and remote notarizations. We had never been able to do that before, but out of necessity, the governor said we could do that. Well, great, because if you're a lawyer who does estate planning, wills, for example, if something is done wrong, it often doesn't come to light until after the person has died and it's too late to fix it. So we were at the beginning of COVID, and I thought to myself, And this was the self-serving part. That's the ironic part. I thought, dear me, I'm going to be doing wills and I don't know what the best practices are because we've never done this. This is brand new. So I happen to be a member of the New York State Bar Association, and we have a very active trust and estates list, community list, where people type in questions and people respond. And I basically, you're too young to remember this, but like the old movies where we say, hey, gang, you want to put on a show in the garage? It was really, hey, gang, does anybody want to get together on a Zoom and talk about best practices for remote will executions and remote notarizations? Because honestly, we don't have any best practices. So sure, the first week, 5 years ago, we had about 25 people and we met for an hour and a half. Very successful meeting. We were super happy with it. And at the end, we were in complete agreement. Let's meet again next week because this was really helpful. And everybody's really actively engaged in thinking about what our best practices will be. Well, the next week, the 25 people had become 50 because word got around. And we cogitated and we came up with some procedures and we realized this is a great idea. Let's meet again next week because we're not finished. The following week, 50 attendees became 100. And all of a sudden it was an aha moment. And people were on camera and people were talking. Heck, we were all stuck in our home offices. It was a wonderful way to engage with our colleagues. And I wish I knew who I could attribute this to, or sometimes jokingly, I'll say, I wish I knew who I could blame. But at the end of that meeting, somebody said, pardon me, hey, this was really helpful. We should do this every week, but talk about other stuff too. And everybody said, sure. And I was fine with continuing to moderate, facilitate, whatever. And so we started meeting weekly, Thursday afternoons from 2:30 to 4. And the numbers just kept growing. People would show up. At the beginning, we were talking about remote executions and so forth. And then we started to segue into we opened the discussion to other areas of trust and estates practice. Now I call those meetings open mic, where we just discuss whatever topics come up at that meeting. But then we realized we had great resources. We have these wonderful people within New York and outside of New York, members of our bar association or not, who are expert in their particular field. So I started to reach out and invite these people, some of whom I knew well, and some I didn't know at all, but I knew them through their reputation, told them about our group. Some of them had heard about us and some of them had not. Would you like to come speak to us for an hour and a half on a Thursday afternoon about whatever, Medicaid issues, objections to wills? And it grew exponentially. We just got people coming every week speaking about wonderful, interesting topics. And we met every week for 2.5 years until I finally said, I think we'll cut back a little. These are wonderful, but it is a lot of work. And let's meet twice a month. And so for a good long while, we met twice a month rather than every single week. Again, the topics were varied, the interest sustained itself. Yes, I was doing the outreach, I was moderating the meetings, but none of this would have continued but for the enthusiasm and participation of all the people who attended. And I have people, honestly, I'll call us some of the elders, people who are very far along in their trust and estates career. We have a group of people who clearly on a Thursday afternoon when the weather's nice, they could be out in the golf course. They do not have to be sitting on a Zoom with 50 or 150 lawyers sharing their knowledge, but there they are every meeting. It's really cool.
Wow. So just to bring it to today, is it still twice a month or is it once a month now? What's it like?
Yes, after a while, it's twice a month now. There was a point where I said, let's go to once a month. I don't want to burn ourselves out and use up every topic, although clearly that was a lame excuse in retrospect, because if we discussed something 5 years ago, we could talk about it again tomorrow. But so we were once a month for a while. I don't recall how long. And then one very loving instigator said, this is not enough. We really need to go back to twice a month. We get too much out of these. And everybody jumped in and said, yeah, we need to meet twice a month again. And so we did. We went back to twice a month, and it's been twice a month now for a couple of years. And I expect it will stay twice a month. What I try to do is one meeting a month, I have a speaker. For example, last week we had an excellent speaker on international estate planning, meaning when people live in New York but own assets in another country. And then once a month, we have what I call an open mic, and that's a free-for-all. People show up and post questions in Zoom chat, and people respond. I'm big on encouraging real interaction, so I do encourage people to be on camera if they can. But I'm happy to say we have such an interest in our group that people can't always be on camera because they might be driving upstate to their Catskill home and they're listening on their phone through the car audio system, so they can't be on camera. But by being I'm sorry. Wait.
No, I was just going to ask how many. So you said went from 10 to 25 to 50 to 100. What is it now on a regular basis? People joining
on a regular basis. It depends on whether it's an open mic or a particular speaker of interest. Sometimes it's 75. Sometimes it's 150.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was more like 20 now. So it's still.
No, the interest, and I'll tell you, our beloved David Goldfarb, who is the coolest senior statesman in our trust and estates community. David was very instrumental in drafting our 2021 power of attorney, which was the first time our power of attorney had been changed in 11 years. And David came to present to Think Tank before the power of attorney went into effect. So before June of 2021. And we had 238 people on that think tank.
Wow. So I have so many questions. This is fantastic. Do you record the speakers when you have a person coming on for the speaker portion?
I do record speakers when speakers permit.
Sure.
Some speakers would prefer not. I do not record the open mic sessions.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the Zoom chat. I encourage people to post questions in the chat. My measure of how successful an afternoon meeting is, I'll look at the Zoom chat. We've got 10 minutes left to the meeting and 15 questions still we didn't even get to. That means people are listening and involved, and it's great.
What about, go so many different directions, but do you ever do breakout rooms?
I have not. We have to date stayed as one cohesive group. And I'll tell you, we have our devotees who are always on screen, who are always actively listening. And at this point, after 5 years, we certainly know each other. We have many people who they don't have their cameras on, but they are absolutely listening and occasionally will turn their camera on if they have a question. Because when people have questions, what I do is I encourage them to go on camera and to ask their own questions. It's,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's a tiny bit time consuming, but what it does is now I have a face for the name for
100%.
David Schnurman. And the next time I see you, I'm going to remember you.
100%.
So I encourage that.
It's fabulous. What are some of do you have a list of all the different speakers and topics you've had over the past 5 years or 2 years or year?
Yeah.
Excel doc?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever done any sort of chat GBT, give me the themes of the different topics we've had or anything like that to get a sense of what were the main areas that you focused on over the years?
That's the beauty of our meetings. There are not main areas that we focused on. We've actually discussed, I haven't counted, I don't have a head count at the moment as to how many different speakers we've had. Honestly, it's probably about 200, but we cover very diverse areas. So it could be anything from assisted reproduction and surrogacy to cryptocurrency to witness deposition to kicking a trustee off because they're not doing their job. So there is not one theme. We really try to cover everything we can come up with.
I love the term study group. Is that actually what you call it?
We are a study group because we're not a CLE. We're not a continuing legal ed class. Actually, I named us quite some time ago. We meet on Thursdays, and we certainly are a study group, but I named us the Thursday Think Tank.
I like it.
Yeah.
What have been some of the biggest aha moments for you in doing this, whether substantively learning something or something else that you want to share with somebody else? Again, I'm thinking like, can this work in every practice area? Well, it's just
totally
for me,
can.
it's just like, oh, okay. Is it that simple? You just get 25 people on a call and then start talking? I'm sure. But like before I get into the challenges, I would love to hear some things that just like you didn't expect and ended up happening from it over the years. I'll
tell you, first of all, I think the Trust and Estates Bar and the Elder Law, Elder Law Special Needs Bar are unique groups of people. They're really professionally generous with one another. And I don't know, maybe the commercial litigation people are contentious. They don't want to share their secrets because they're always fighting with each other. And of course, I'm making a generalization. But I think we have a very helpful group of colleagues. And I think that's the secret sauce for our group. I forgot the second part of your question, but
it's just more this for me, where I see this is like you get more than 20 people on a call, it gets overwhelming and unbearing. But it seems like what I'm hearing from you, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people are just listening and maybe every so often will engage. And 20% are always talking and engaging and asking questions. And that's why it's able to work.
Yes, absolutely.
And it might not always be the same 20%, depends on the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big thing that I'm really big on is I encourage anonymous questions in the Zoom chat so that, let's face it, many of us in the practice of law from time to time feel like we're imposters, that we don't know something that we should know. And we're embarrassed that we don't know it.
Yep.
Now, of course, the truth is you're not the only one on the call who doesn't know that, but in your own mind, you are. And so by encouraging anonymous questions, and what they do is I'm the host, so it just comes directly to me as the host, and Mr. Smith says, could you please ask the following question?
That's what I was going to ask you, if there was a setting to make the question anonymous. So it's an extra step. They'll ask you directly, and then you make it anonymous by doing it for them. So when they do it anonymous, do they just chat you directly, or do all questions go to you first?
Nope. Well, all questions are posted publicly.
Yeah.
Unless someone wants to post a question anonymously.
Got it.
And then they just send it to me directly, and only since I'm the host, I'm the only one who'll see it. If there is a speaker who I've made co-host because let's say they want to co-host and monitor the questions, or they want to screen share their PowerPoint, then they'll see it as well. But I think someone who does a question anonymously is more embarrassed that their colleagues discover that they don't know the answer to what they're asking.
For sure.
So it works out well. It really does.
Have you guys ever met in person?
We've never had a think tank meeting in person, although because we're all over the state. For example, Hani, who introduced you and I, Hani's in Rochester. So he doesn't necessarily get down to Manhattan, which is where a lot of us are centralized in the metro area. We have met one another at annual meetings or spring meetings or whatever that the Bar Association holds.
Got it. I have to imagine, first of all, it's great to hear that this is what you said. This is the most professional, rewarding experience. Maybe just expand on that a little bit. Why? Because you've been a practicing attorney for 40 years. I'm sure you've done a lot of really unbelievable things for your clients and grown in your career. And this is something that, again, you're not getting paid for. You're putting your time in. And I don't know. I just would love to uncover that a little bit.
Thank you. I have to say, I've done a lot of good work over these years. I'll back up a moment. I was never a big firm person. I was never one of those striving to work the big firm and the big bucks. And that was not the route I took. I was always in a small law practice. And then 30 years ago, I became self-employed. And then for a while, I was in a two-person partnership. And I've done good work, and I'm proud of my clients. I develop friendships with clients, which it's very intimate work when you do, particularly when you do estate planning and the administration part. But what I'm doing now with Think Tank, and again, you're right. I mean, it's not paid work. I look at it as a sort of pro bono aspect of my career, although I'm not working for free for poor people, but I think what I'm doing is helping to educate many lawyers, which will expand out into the community, and they'll help many clients. I honestly feel the most proud of these efforts of anything I've done in my entire professional practice. And I think within that, the byproduct, besides people becoming acquainted with people, I would never have met Hani Sarge. He practices now in Rochester. We don't go to the same courts. We don't necessarily cross paths with each other. What happened is I started to invite court personnel and surrogate judges to speak with us. And they were happy to come and speak with us because let's face, you wouldn't know this. Right at the beginning of COVID, we had the ability to e-file online through a New York State database. This was new to all of us. Westchester was the pilot county. Surrogate Sol was instrumental in that. But a lot of us had to learn this e-file system. And what happened was we were just messing up. Not because we were dummies, but because it was a new database. And we come to find out it's actually a two-level database. We upload into one system, but then the court personnel have to transport, I'm using the wrong word, from system A to their in-house system in the courthouse. So it was getting unwieldy. And in fact, the more mistakes we practitioners made, the harder it made it for the court personnel.
For sure.
So inviting the court personnel and the judges to come speak, the wonderful byproduct of that was we opened up a bona fide dialogue.
For sure.
Among practitioners, court clerks, and judges.
It's almost like you became a mini bar association in a way. And I'm wondering, because of that, over the years, did any bar associations want to do anything with you? Did want to have you do it more directly with them? Did any sponsors want to get involved? Yeah, just curious. Did you ever look to think? Let's start with those two questions.
No and no. No bar association has ever reached out to me to say, hey, you want to hook up with our structure here. I will say I'm grateful to the New York State Bar Association, to which I've been a paying member for a real long time, that they permit me to send my announcements out every week. But other than that, it's not as though they sponsor or invite us, because we're not a CLE. And I don't mean this to be a mercenary statement, but I don't think we wouldn't make any money for them because we don't charge anything.
Yeah,
I don't require any bar membership. Anyone who wants to attend our online study sessions, they're permitted to.
Have you ever thought about ways you can either scale it or make it more efficient, such as having very minimal dues to have a virtual assistant or somebody manage the admin stuff, or the stuff that like you just don't want to do anymore after 5 years, that like you can just systematize and make it so you can focus on what you love to do?
I'll have to say this, and sometimes we say we should never say never. I will never monetize Think Tank.
Not to monetize, if you want not for you to monetize, but if you wanted to have more help, I would say, to be able to do it as today and potentially bring it back to if there's more of them going on, then there's more value, but you physically can't do it each week or something to that degree.
Yeah, I haven't given that aspect much thought. I'm in a routine now, and as we've grown, people reach out to me. I'm happy to say the judges reach out to me, which we've really opened up a dialogue. Would it be good maybe to have an admin people, for example, have the database with our audio recordings, which have been maintained with the PowerPoints, which our speakers have given us? Yes, but maybe I'm just a micromanager at heart.
Where do you keep the video? Is there a place for everyone to see them all?
I do know, actually. They have to ask me for it, which is very inefficient, I admit.
Short of me getting in trouble, so don't hold me to it. But we have a product that many firms and organizations use that is essentially allows them to host their courses internally on the Lawline site. It doesn't go in our catalog. Nobody else sees it except those who are in their firm or in their clients. As part of my wanting to give back as well, I'll just say it, and then they could tell me I can't do it afterwards. But if you're interested, I'm happy to offer that ability to you and your group. Again, I don't know how many videos there are, but certainly putting them on the site where you can give everybody access, and it plays in the same interface as the courses. So you have a private way to do that. That's just one way to give a little bit more energy around, because then if you're not even at that session, or if you've been to past sessions, it gives you access to all that. Something that, and if it's not us, there's maybe worth thinking about doing, or maybe you don't want to do that because then you're afraid people won't show up at the sessions because they know they can get on demand.
No, I think I have no fear of people not showing up. In fact, sometimes our meeting dates are a little erratic because we can't meet the first Thursday because there's a bar association meeting, and I certainly wouldn't want to step on their toes. Or we don't want to meet Holy Thursday because there may be people either religious observance or on vacation with their kids who are out of school. And I'll find on days we don't have meetings, people are signing on to the Zoom thinking we have a meeting. So they're eager to be there.
Fair enough.
My reservation would be that to date, when I've recorded some presentation, I have made promises to the speaker that this is for our in-house use. These are for our, quote, think tank attendees, and none of us are formal members, but our think tank attendees who maybe missed a session, or they were in the session but got called out for an emergency or whatever. So those promises in the past were made, and I certainly wouldn't want to breach those promises, but that doesn't mean there would not be another mechanism for maintaining everything, quote unquote, in-house, but having access for it.
And two things, again, for me, I just always think about systematizing. Systematizing? No. That's okay. Maybe that's
making a system.
Thank you. But just to make sure I'm clear, whatever those courses or speakers were, the only people who would have access to them would be the people in the think tank. So it wouldn't go out that. But I understand once it's like in a catalog, it feels more than just like sending it out here or there. And then the third thing is, you can email, not for with us or anybody else, you can email anyone who's done it before and say, look, we're creating a catalog just for people in the think tank. Is that okay if we put it in the catalog? I always err on the side of over communicating those things and under communicating, but that we can move past those. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Let me ask your advice. I am very excited by what you're sharing here. And I think about how could Lawline, similar to you, at no cost, right? Like how could Lawline help facilitate more groups like this with our community and our customers? And because we've been doing this for a long time now. And one of the things that we do really well is on-demand CLE courses. One of the things that we don't really do is this peer-to-peer study groups. And I just think it's a fabulous idea. And I would love to see a world at no extra cost, right? As part of just being a Lawline member, we facilitate or help facilitate dozens or different study groups in this area. Let's pretend that's what I do. How would you think about we approach
that? Actually, that sounds easy peasy. Here's the thing. Really, because this grew organically. I've said all along, sure, I was doing some work and I was enthusiastic. I'll own that. I will. But my work and my enthusiasm would have been futile if it had not been for people who were genuinely interested in learning what we had to offer. And I just also want to add, we don't have quote unquote members per se. I never ask people to sign up for anything. There's no pre-registration. I do advertise. I said our announcements every Monday on the New York State Bar because I'm a member. So that's thousands of people that get those notices. And then I have hundreds of people who are not necessarily members of the State Bar who have asked me to be on our blind copy Evite list. So I have hundreds of, it goes out to a lot of people every week. Now, how you could do this, I'll use as an example. If you open up, and now I'm thinking of the physical magazine and not the website, go to any bar association website and see all the practice areas that have their own sections. And civil litigation, personal injury, currency. We could name, I don't know, we could probably name 25, 30 practice areas, real property, of course. I think this sort of format would work in any practice area. We even have an overlap. For example, new thing in New York State. It's now April. Maybe this went into effect in 6 months ago, or maybe I'm just spaced about how long ago it did go into effect. We have something now called a transfer on death deed. Well, this is applicable for people in a trust and estate section who may have the need to do this sort of estate planning with clients, particularly with people of more modest holdings where maybe their real estate is their biggest holding. It's also of interest to people in the real estate section because it's a type of deed where it's to not get into a big discussion about this particular issue, but it sort of avoids needing a will if your house is your only asset. I won't say whether I think it's good or bad, but just you see the practice areas overlap. And so I could envision think tanks across the board.
So let's see the formula. We need to think like what first thing you need is somebody in that practice area who's willing, ready, and able to take ownership over that think tank. Second thing you need is at least a small community to be able to send out to, okay, we're doing a Zoom call next week and bring your questions. Like you can make it an open mic before you.
What do you want to talk about?
Don't even think about presenters yet. And you have a couple of weeks in a row, enough open questions, enough collaboration. Okay, anybody have a speaker they want to join, and then you go from there. So it really seems to me, and we're talking about Zoom, right? So like, how do I see Lawline facilitate? Because what I don't want this to be like a top-down approach where it's okay, Lawline. I just want to help ignite different groups and be part of that. And so I think, where would you recommend, in addition to trusts and estates, another area that's you think would have that type of community?
I honestly think any practice area that has a section in any formal bar association, New York City Bar.
I would agree. No, I would agree for sure. I'm with you.
Yeah, we just grew organically because here we were at the beginning of COVID with an urgent need to sign wills for some people who knew who were going to die.
By the way, all those rules that went in effect during COVID, are they still in effect?
No.
You wish they were or no?
Interesting question. No. Do I personally wish we could still do remote executions? I'm going to say no, just for me, because they were really hard. It was FaceTime or Zoom and faxing or scanning and email. They were really labor intensive. Now, did I do wills for people who were dying and who died? And thank goodness we were able to do them 100%.
Got it. Wow. First of all, thank you for diving deep into the study groups. It was really impressive what they did. Last question on study groups, and then I'll give you a couple of rapid fire questions, and then we can call it a day. Is, do you ever bring in speakers that are not estate planning specific? It could be a public speaking presenter, a wellness speaker, anything just to help them besides just in that specific.
On occasion, yes. We had two great guys speak to us about the lawyer assistance program, which, if you're not aware of it, that's to help lawyers and judges who have abuse or addiction or mental health issues. And so that was very interesting. And it certainly wasn't topic specific for trusts and estates specifically. We've had other speakers who, I won't say it was a stretch, but it wasn't exactly on point what one would think of as a trust and estates or elder law special needs topic, but we try to actually meet the needs of the people who are giving us 90 minutes of their week to offer them something that will help them in their professional practice. By the way, getting back to the concept of networking that we spoke to at the top of the hour, there have been people who have referred matters to one another. Let's say I don't do business organization, but one of the people in the group does a lot of work with corporations and limited liability companies and that kind of thing. So people have referred business. People have gotten jobs. People have obtained per diem gigs.
If I'm an estate planner and I'm listening to this and I want to join your group, is there a public link that I can get to, or do you have to be privately invited? How does it work?
If they're a member of the state bar, they will see my announcements every Monday morning. If they are not a member, they are welcome to email me privately, and I will add them to our blind copy Evite list.
Okay. And I don't know if you give out your email, or can they go on LinkedIn and message you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I give out my email. I'm going to say something that's not politically correct, and I hope nobody gets insulted. I actually stopped my active participation in LinkedIn some years ago when I was very publicly promoted and complimented for doing work that I don't do. And it freaked me out.
Okay.
so
Wow. Okay.
so I stopped really using LinkedIn as one of my resources. And I also, by the way, when I send out these announcements to the thousands of people who get them, write in it every week. I always encourage people, forward this to your friends.
Yeah.
And
Well, I would
do.
say maybe, look, things change. LinkedIn has evolved a lot over the years and they don't always get everything. Maybe if you have time, dip your toe back in the water.
Yeah.
Great conversations happening, especially in law, legal tech, AI, and I'm sure in estate planning. And Hani, that's how me and him originally first communicated. And I know he's doing a lot on there as well. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your private group and what you've done. I hope it's inspired at least one other attorney to want to do this. It's inspired me. And I want to help you any way I can, personally or through Lawline. Linda,
thank you. We can have a private conversation outside of this
Absolutely. Well,
conversation.
Thanks again. And anybody who's got this far, appreciate you watching.
Thank you.